more of the junk build of Aristocrats.
Oh.
The lone wolf style.
So that's basically the deck that Brad Nelson made famous at SCG Baltimore, I believe. Eschewing from the red, going more for a black-white-green version. Jeff Rodrigues on the right, he's playing a Naya build. Pretty straightforward. It's, I guess, Naya mid-rangey. He's playing Boros Reckoner, Huntmaster of the Fells, tops out at Thundermaw Hellkite. So interesting to see how this one plays out. Again, Thundermaw Hellkite, pretty good against Lingering Souls, which we know Todd has 4 copies in his deck.
Jeff starts off here with a Avacyn's Pilgrim and a turn 2 Sacred Foundry. Todd with a turn 1 Doom Traveler, passes the turn back. A lot of the Junk Aristocrats deck, sort of the shell is the Aristocrats from the Pro Tour combined with some of the junk shell we started to see at Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, which is Cartel Aristocrat, Varolz, and Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah, the version from the Pro Tour was much more aggressive. It had cards like Champion of the Parish and Silverblade Paladin. These versions are much more controlling. They try to win more with a combo element of like Blood Artist. So this Todd out to a reasonable start. He's got Doom Traveler, and you're supposed to he's gumming the board up a little bit, but he doesn't have access to black mana, it appears. So he won't be able to flash back that Lingering Souls just yet. And Jeff does have Mizium Mortars, which is effectively a one-sided Wrath effect. And he can, looks like he's going to just pass the turn. Yep, so we're going to get a triple block here. Looks like Doom Traveler will die. Just wants to get rid of a token. And pass the turn back, killing another token with the Huntmaster flip.
And I'm a little surprised that Jeff wanted to make an attack there. Once you're on Mizium Mortars, it feels like you sort of want the board to gum up a little bit.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't expecting Todd to block the way he did. Expecting at worst maybe a 2-for-1, but I don't think it's the worst situation. Again, Jeff doesn't have a lot of threats, but that Huntmaster can pretty much go the way because Todd doesn't have that much removal. He has 4 copies of Tragic Slip, but he doesn't have any access to black mana right now.
So we'll see Varolz, and that is a card that gives all your creatures scavenge for their mana cost. You can also sacrifice a creature to regenerate it. So it's now a 3/3 and offering a little bit of insurance against Mizium Mortars.
Wow, so it looks like Jeff drew 3 straight lands. So not in great shape right here. He still has that Mizium Mortar, so he's threatening to have a one-sided Wrath effect later on, but again, without pressure to back that up, you know, Todd will be able to rebound from that. He's got Lingering Souls in his graveyard. As long as he doesn't overwhelm his board, he should be able to still bounce back from that.
Todd offering up the trade.
Yeah, so looks like we're going to get a double block here.
So Jeff appears to be willing to pass. He's going to send it back to Todd. If Todd wants to regenerate and keep Varolz alive, then Jeff keeps his Ravager, and if not, then they just trade. It looks like we're just going to trade.
And that's, you know, a great turn for Todd, just because Jeff has no other threats. His draws have been so bad in the last few turns, so even the Mizium Mortars here is not really going to be that impressive.
Yeah, he has a lot of big draws here, Thundermaw Hellkite especially,
yep.
But he's got to find them.
Ooh, and it looks like we have a top deck Young Wolf here, and Garrett takes out the Avacyn Pilgrim and flips. Thundermaw still, great draw here. Let's see if we can get something going. Just a Voice of Resurgence, not exactly what Jeff needs right here. It's very, very difficult to attack Todd's deck on the ground. You really need flyers. Thundermaw is probably the best card in Jeff's deck against the Aristocrats.
Yeah, and all builds of Aristocrats we've seen, Cartel Aristocrat plus additional blockers plus Boros Reckoner, the deck's very hard to fight through on the ground.
Yeah, you have rolls, you have all these token errors, you have even Young Wolf is an obnoxious little blocker. So there's just and now he's going to be able to churn out tokens with his Garrick, but it looks like he's sacking his Young Wolf to search for a creature. Could it be Rolls or a High Priest perhaps? High Priest wouldn't be that bad here.
I think Todd is probably correctly reading Jeff on being very light on action.
Oh, Obzerat.
A fine creature to go get while your opponent's not doing very much.
Yeah.
Also matches up very well against Mizium Mortars.
So Obzerat's going to come down here, gain Todd 2 life, drain Jeff for 2. Likely going to get phased out here.
He may want to hold back for 1 turn to give some insurance against Garrett getting killed, but looks like Todd's just gonna blink it out.
Wow, another land from Jeff here. We could just see a Mizium Mortars on the Young Wolf to kill off the Garrick. I think he just needs to kill Garrick here. Your Mortars aren't going to get much better.
Yeah.
You might want to just, you know, get your value while you can. Kill off the Garrick.
That is a terrible feeling, but I believe Jeff's call was correct there.
And not when he saw his opener, probably not what he was expecting Mortars to do this game. But you know, when you get land flooded, not much else you can do here. Looks like we're going to see a Lingering Souls here, perhaps. So Todd attacks for first with the Obsidian for 5, dropping Jeff down to 11. Todd still has Lingering Souls as well as another copy of Varls in his hand.
Yeah. A lot of action.
Looks like we might just get a Scavenge here.
I think Todd is probably... I like playing Varls here instead of just emptying out a Lingering Souls. He's got to be aware that, you know, Thundermaw Hellkite is a card that Jeff has access to in his deck. It's probably 3 or 4 copies in his main deck. And so try to develop your board without playing too far into it.
Yeah, and he pretty much maximizes mana this turn the same way without getting rid of the Lingering Souls in his hand. He scavenged the Young Wolf to make the Varals a 3/3 and still flashback the Lingering Souls that he cast earlier in the game.
And Todd's doing a very good job of, even though this game's obviously very lopsided because of Jeff floating out here, Todd's doing a very good job of pushing his board forward while still leaving enough back in the event that Jeff has his best top decks.
Yeah.
Instead of just throwing out all of his Lingering Souls tokens. Leave a Lingering Souls back, because if, you know, Thundermaw Hellkite is drawn for Jeff, then he has that left over to then block with. So.
And it just goes to show you how robust the deck like Aristocrats is, because, you know, you just have so many good threats. Lingering Souls, all your Undying creatures, Varolz, Obsidian, and he also has a Gavany Township in play, so it doesn't matter how weak your creatures might appear, they are going to be quite threatening.
And there's Voice of Resurgence, another very powerful card that's also very powerful in concert with all the sack effects and the stuff we associate the Aristocrats with.
Yeah, so with Varolz in play, he can actually sacrifice the Voice of Resurgence to give it a regeneration shield, and he has 4 creatures in play along with the voice token, so he can make a 5/5 if he chooses right here. So Voice of Resurgence probably at its best in Junk Aristocrats, I'd say.
Yes.
You know, the fact that you can sack it along with the number of creatures that you could create really make it a powerful effect.
Yeah, no, it's definitely using, you know, all parts of the animal very well.
Yeah. So Obsidian gets phased out, and Jeff, not many cards Jeff can draw in this situation. Draws a Simic Charm. That is an answer to Obsidian, but Obsidian's going to come in next turn, drain Jeff down from 9 to 7, and Todd just has too many attackers on the board, along with Gavany Township.
Voice of Resurgence also interacts very nicely with Obsidian, as we're about to see here, is you can kind of only deal with Obsidian with instants, and then you have to play something on your opponent's turn, triggering the voice. So that's another nice little wrinkle that the deck has.
Yeah, so things not going very well for Jeff here. He decides to pack it up, doesn't even want to show the Selesnya Charm. So pretty unfortunate there for Jeff. Got a little land flooded, but you know, after board, let's see what he's going to be bringing in here. He has 1 copy of Zealous Conscript, 1 copy of Assemble the Legion, 2 copies of Ground Seal, 2 copies of Rest in Peace, 2 copies of Infliction Courage, 3 Boros Charm, 2 Ray of Revelation, 1 Garrick Relentless, and 1 Mizium Mortars. Now, conscripts, you know, it's not bad. It's a way to deal with Varolz, I guess. Could see that maybe coming in. Assemble the Legion, probably not. Ground Seal, no. Rest in Peace is interesting because it basically turns off the High Priests and the Voice of Resurgence, and it turns off the Blood Artists.
I think that Rest in Peace is awesome in this matchup. It is not particularly good against the black-white-red builds of the Aristocrats because they can play a game not really involving their graveyard very much. And I've seen in the Open Series a lot of players kind of incorrectly bringing Rest in Peace against those builds of the Aristocrats. Here I think it's incredible because so much of the Junk Aristocrats deck is playing out of the graveyard. Whether it's either death triggers or flashback cards or what have you. So I think Rest in Peace is a no-brainer here. It's quite powerful.
Yeah, I like bringing in the Rest in Peace. I like bringing in the Garrick too, because there's just so many good targets for Garrick in this matchup. I would definitely bring in the other copy of Mizzy Mortars, even though it wasn't fantastic in that particular situation. There are plenty of situations where it could be good for you. Not sure if you really want to go for Unflinching Courage, against 4 Tragic Slips and plenty of ways to activate it. Morbid, you don't really want to go that way. And Borstrom, not really. It's more of an anti-wrath card than anything else.
Yep.
So definitely like the Rest in Peace. Definitely like the Mizzy Mortars. Definitely like the Garrick Relentless. And I think I'd still probably bring in the Zealous Conscripts too.
So on the other side of the table, Todd has access to 3 copies of Abrupt Decay and 2 copies of Smite. If he wants to speed up his deck a little bit, he has another copy of Obstat he can bring in and 2 copies of Appetite for Brains. The Naya deck, it's a little weird to be thinking of bringing in both Abrupt Decay and Appetite for Brains, but the Naya deck has a pretty smooth curve going up from 1 through 5. There's a reasonable number of Abrupt Decay targets in things like Loxodon, Smiter, and similar, the cheaper creatures, and Appetite for Brain covers you against some of the bigger threats like Hummaster the Fells and Thundermaw Hellkite. I would imagine, I'm no expert on this deck, but I would imagine in the post-board games, especially against decks that have white in it, you generally want to de-emphasize how much you're leaning on your graveyard, because it's likely that's going to be under attack. You don't want to have this heavy graveyard value plan and then get Rest in Peace. So I would imagine Todd is likely to just board out cards that are really predicated on his graveyard being live, and bring in some of the cheaper removal spells and maybe a couple copies of Appetite. Obstat is a great card for what I'm describing, because it's just powerful on its own. You don't need to be, flashing back spells or interacting with your graveyard for that to be good. So that's a pretty efficient way to win the game once you've kind of gummed up the board.
Yeah, the problem with Todd's deck is that there's so many cards that he really can't board out that are like, if Jeff draws a Rest in Peace, it's going to shut off cards in Todd's deck. There's just too many cards that it's good against in Todd's deck, main deck, and he can't board out all of them. And he doesn't even have that many cards that he really wants. Again, you mentioned the Appetite of Brains, you mentioned the Obstat. 4 Deathrite Shaman, those are not coming in.
Right.
So, the problem is he just doesn't have that many cards that he wants to bring in, compared to the number of cards that just get hosed by Rest in Peace. But again, Jeff only has 2 copies of Rest in Peace, so we'll see how it plays out. Also, the Thundermaw Hellkite. It's really, I'd say Thundermaw and Rest in Peace are probably the 2 most important cards post-board. He also has 3 copies of Domri-Rad, and Domri-Rad along with Boros Reckoner, pretty good combination there at picking off the cheap creatures that Todd has in his deck.
No, he certainly can't completely prevent the impact of Rest in Peace, but he can mitigate it to some extent. I actually think perhaps boarding out Lingering Souls could be reasonable between Thundermaw Hellkite and Graveyard Hate. Maybe that's the card that's not supposed to be there.
So it looks like we do have a turn 2 Domri-Rad for Jeff. Pretty good draw. And he reveals a Restoration Angel.
Off to a great start here for Jeff. On the board, Todd's already mulliganed, and Domri, like you mentioned, can be very efficient at picking off some of Todd's utility creatures.
Yeah, and it looks like Jeff does have the Boros Reckoner too, so along with an Advent of the Worm. So pretty ideal start for Jeff right here.
It's a combo.
Combos. Combo breaker.
Advent of the Worm and Domri, not so much a combo, but...
Not so much, but... All right, there we go. Turn 2 Young Wolf. Exactly where you want to be. And there's the Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah.
So it looks like Jeff does have enough mana to get that into play on turn 4.
And Todd actually has Lingering Souls in hand also, so it's possible you might see that little sequence there.
So another uptick on Domri-Rad with a miss there. So it looks like we might get a pass back. Advent of the Worm sitting there, just waiting. So Cavern does name Dragon. And Jeff is contemplating whether he wants to cast a Boros Reckoner or just pass turn back, and he does decide to pass turn back. Again, Advent of the Worm just sitting in his hand, waiting to jump out and strike.
That wolf, that poor wolf.
That poor wolf didn't know what's coming. Again, with Restoration Angel and Advent of the Worm, Todd probably just doesn't attack here. There's just too many cards it could be.
Yeah.
Even though it has Undying, I think the sack effect is pretty useful. But it looks like Todd is going to come in, try to get rid of the Domri-Rad.
And Jeff, not opening himself up to any tricks, is just going to say, "Yep, that's fine."
And Cartel Aristocrat and Doom Traveler come down. Here comes a 5/5 Trample Worm, instant speed, and are we going to see Thundermaw here?
Seems like a pretty reasonable place to go.
Yeah, the question is, do you fight something too?
Well,
There's really no good targets to fight with Tommy Red. Maybe if you want to get that Boris Reckoner into play and then fight something.
So I like not casting Thundermaw there because Todd could simply sack the Doom Traveler to give his Cartel Aristocrat protection from green and basically chump block both creatures.
Yeah.
So this is a better advancement of his board.
So it looks like, yep, we are going to fight maybe Cartel Aristocrat possibly, or Young Wolf.
I would imagine it's Reckoner on Aristocrat makes the most sense. Maybe, no, okay, it's Reckoner on Wolf.
So we're just going to get a sack, so the Reckoner won't even trigger. Todd responds with sacrificing the Cartel Aristocrat. So doesn't really get that much value out of it there that turn, but eventually Todd won't have enough cards to sack.
And Todd's hand is actually quite synergistic. He has Ferals and Blood Artist in hand, so he might be able to cobble together enough chump blocks and pings and pot shots he gets to attack with a Cartel Aristocrat from time to time, that he actually might be able, as bad as this game is going, I mean, he's going to be able to get in his shots here.
Yeah, the problem is that next turn he's going to be able to act. He's going to keep ticking up that Domirad next turn. He's got the Thundermaw, and along with the 5/5 trampling worm. So the fact that the worm has trample really makes all the difference here. I agree with you. Todd has a pretty good hand at being able to gum up the board. Unfortunately, the 5/5 trampling is just huge.
Todd can use the Aristocrat to just take out Domri, though. He can sacrifice a creature to give protection from white or red, and then be able to attack Domri unopposed.
Yeah, and I kind of like that play, and it looks like that is what we're going to get here.
Also allows you to use your leftover mana to scavenge onto another creature with your barrels if you're feeling so inclined. So you're seeing some of the kind of the cute little synergies manifest for Todd this turn.
I think I would have preferred scavenging the Doom Traveler onto the Lingering Souls token because it protects it from Thundermaw. Plus, you'd rather just attack in the air, right?
Sure.
I don't think you're worried about the gumming up the ground.
I can definitely understand but also I can understand just wanting to make your biggest, put as much power onto your regenerator as possible as a reasonable handhold for how he wants to proceed here. So I can kind of see it cutting both ways.
So let's see if we're going to see a Thundermaw here. Kind of needs to get something on the board. Now that Domirad's gone, Thundermaw comes down, takes out the Lingering Souls token. Todd just sacks it to put a regeneration shield on his rolls. With Todd at 13 here, let's see. Rolls can block. Yeah, it looks like everything's going to come in here. Rolls and Young Wolf can jump in front of the token if he chooses. Not a great situation. He still has, he has a Selesny Charm in his hand too.
I think I would just send Thundermaw and leave the...
I think, yeah, the fact that he put Stomping Ground to play untapped, he knew he was going to probably send him as a Reckoner too. Just trying to put as much pressure on possible, especially because he has a Selesny Charm in his hand. I think he's pretty much thinking, I'm going to be able to seal this game up next turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that worm is going to get taken out this turn, and Todd looks like he's going to get dropped to 5. So pretty good situation for Jeff right here. There is a regeneration shield already on the rolls too, so he doesn't have to sack any other creatures.
A lot of damage coming through, and still has Restoration Angel and Selesnya Charm at the ready for next turn. So
yeah,
pretty commanding position.
Even if Todd just tries to go all in with the Lingering Souls here, he's got the Restoration Angel on the Thundermaw, which re-triggers again. So Jeff wins that game after a pretty reasonable start, even off of a mulligan. Todd had a pretty good start. Unfortunately, Jeff just had the right cards in the right spot.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff's draw was so explosive. I do think that if his draw is a little bit slower there, Todd, for as kind of anemic as a lot of his cards individually are, would have been able to cobble together a pretty powerful board state. And that's a lot of the power level of the Aristocrats is between Cartel Aristocrat and Blood Artist, you actually have a weird amount of range and ability to control the damage race. Whether you're on defense, sacrificing things, and blocking for free with Cartel Aristocrat while getting some drain effects, or doing the opposite thing where you're putting your Cartel Aristocrat on offense and chump blocking on the way back. For a deck that's kind of mid-rangey, I guess is probably the best way to describe it, actually can kill from kind of out of nowhere, even without the Blasphemous Act Boros Reckoner setup. So
yeah, and it's a perfect example of basically synergy versus raw power, because Jeff's deck is just all raw power.
Yes.
You know, you have some synergies, but it's basically like planeswalkers, giant creatures, you know, I'm just going to power through. Whereas Todd's deck is, I'm very synergistic. I'm going to just cobble together this board state where I have inevitability and there's nothing really you can do about it. Unfortunately, Jeff's raw power was just on full display there, and very quickly too. You know, turn 2 Dummy-Rad, turn 2 Dummy-Rad, turn 3 Advent of the Worm, you know, turn 4 Boros Reckoner. You know, there's just too much power there, too early for Todd to contend.
yeah.
But I agree with you. If Jeff maybe doesn't have that turn 1 Avacyn Pilgrim, maybe Todd's able to turn things around.
Yeah, he just never quite got the opportunity to really plant his feet in the game and settle in. He was on the back foot, reacting to Jeff's explosive start the whole time. Never really got to get the ground set up.
Yeah, because he did have that Blood Artist in hand, which he wasn't even able to cast. So yeah, if he was able to maybe put some amount of pressure on Jeff, maybe one more turn where that Blood Artist could actually finish him off.
Yeah.
So Todd's going to be on the play this turn, so pretty good situation. Again, Jeff has 4 copies of Avacyn Pilgrim and 2 copies of Arbor Elf to sort of steal back the initiative. Todd's deck doesn't have any mana ramp, but all his creatures are relatively cheap, so he can put together a pretty dominating board presence by turn 4.
Yeah. And if Jeff's all on the ground,
Yeah.
it doesn't take that much for Todd to lock up that angle of attack.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Jeff's cards are very powerful, but he needs the right powerful cards in this matchup. You know, if he draws the Huntmasters and the Boros Reckoners and the Voice of Resurgence, it's not nearly as impressive as, you know, the Advent of the Worms and the Thunderbolt Hellkites.
Yeah, so you see Todd take a mulligan here.
It looks like Jeff is pondering whether or not he wants his 7 cards there. This is one of those situations where even if you have, you know, 3 lands and some cards, maybe they're not the right cards. So it looks like he's going to 6-2. Knowing on the draw, you probably need a certain set of cards in order to beat Todd's deck.
No, you know, if I'm in Jeff's position on the draw, I'm very inclined to just mulligan hands that have nothing but ground attackers.
Yeah.
Because that angle of attack is so bad. Even a reasonable hand full of Smiters and Huntmaster of the Fells may just win a very small percentage of the time.
And even like Rest in Peace. You know, Rest in Peace Huntmaster of Fells. At 4 lands, I'd be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jeff and Todd both going to 6 here. You know, in this situation, I tend to lean more towards the raw power deck. When both players are mulliganing, I think the raw power deck probably has a better chance of pulling out of it. Just because Todd's deck, you know, again, it has a lot of synergies, but also requires a lot of cards for those synergies to work.
Right. Every card you're down means that you might have a bunch of young wolves and, you know, maybe a Verol's, but nothing to really make anything happen.
Exactly.
With.
Yeah. So both players going to 6 here, and let's see if their 6 cards are better than their first 7.
You can kind of think of, if both players got 10 card hands, Todd would be a huge favorite.
Oh, yeah.
So you can kind of extrapolate that. The further and further you go down, the more it favors Jeff.
So it looks like both players are happy. Todd plays a Godless Shrine on turn 1, and it looks like a Doom Traveler is going to come down on this side of the board. Jeff, does he have a Mana Accelerator of his own? It looks like he does have an Avacyn Pilgrim. So turn 1 Temple Garden and an Avacyn Pilgrim. So good start from both players, even off of mulligan.
Yeah.
Ooh, Appetite for Brains. So that was one of the cards that you thought Todd would bring in this matchup. And it looks like we have an Abrupt Decay too. It might get the Abrupt Decay on the Avacyn Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Yep. Just wants to keep Jeff off of mana. Like that play a lot. Ooh, Jeff does draw an Arbor Elf, and he does have, it looks like a couple of copies of Advent of the Worm along with the Mizium Mortars.
Jeff's hand's very powerful.
Yeah, it looks like 2 Advent of the Worms and a Mizium Mortars along with a couple other lands. And there's Sigarda, which will probably meet a timely death. Ooh, Unflinching Courage, interesting. Jeff decided to bring in the Unflinching Courage in this matchup. Use the Mizium Mortars on the High Priest. High Priest, very, very powerful card in Todd's deck, can get activated relatively easily if it doesn't have Summoning Sickness.
I really like Jeff not messing around there. It is very dangerous to let that thing get active.
So Todd can take one of the Advent of the Worms, but he will leave Jeff with another copy along with an Unflinching Courage. So interesting, despite the fact that Todd has 4 copies of Tragic Slips in his hand, a Tragic Slip, and along with Abrupt Decays, Jeff decided to bring in the Unflinching Courage.
Well,
so,
you can understand the argument of Trample actually being very powerful against Todd's deck because of the way the ground gets locked up. So I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of it in the matchup, but if you saw Game 1, Trample actually would have been valuable to have.
Oh yeah, it makes total sense if you think it from that way, in terms of if Jeff's just thinking, I need ways to break through because he clogs up the ground, then it makes total sense. So it looks like Advent of War comes in, and we might see one of those Unflinching Courages come down because Jeff definitely drew a second one as well. And there's, another Mizium Mortar. So.
I would just saddle up and ride right here, I think.
Pants him up. Oh, Jeff, you already tapped the mana. You know you want to.
Well, he might be, is he thinking about maybe putting it on the Arbor Elf?
Possibly. Now, if he has 2 copies, but I think that's too. Yeah, you can't.
I like this.
You got to go big. Go big or go home.
Put Armadillo Cloak on your biggest creature in play is a pretty reasonable handhold. Like,
so it's been working for 20 years. So a 7/7 lifelink trampling worm is coming over, and Todd Anderson simply quadruple blocks and puts a regeneration shield on, triple blocks rather, and puts a regeneration shield on Brawls. So 3 damage will trample over, and Jeff will gain 7 life. So Todd just has an Appetite of Brains in his hand, doesn't really have an answer right now. Tragic Slip off the top, can we see some, or an Abrupt Decay perhaps? And there's an Abrupt Decay, perfect card draw right there for Todd. It deals with the token easily, so we're gonna see a scavenge here from Todd. You're gonna scavenge up one of the Lingering Souls, or one of the Spirit tokens, and are we gonna see a swing for everything? Yep. So let's see what Jeff does here now. Does he use the other Unflinching Courage, or does he read Todd on an Abrupt Decay? Or no, it looks like Todd's just going to go for it right here. He's not going to mess around.
Sure.
Would you have waited? You think you need to actually cast Abrupt Decay?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're playing around there because...
Even if he casts Voice of Resurgence, you can do it in response. But yeah. So let's see here.
You're not worried about Restoration Angel because it's a token creature. So
yeah. So Todd, it looks like Jeff drew a Voice of Resurgence. So he does have another target, or at least a better target for Unflinching Courage than Avacyn Pilgrim. But he still looks like he has the Mizium Mortars too.
Yeah, I mean, part of the argument here is there's some value in playing Unflinching Courage because it sets you up next turn where you can play both of your 2-mana spells, but probably better just to get Voice in play as soon as possible.
Yeah. You're not in any threat of dying right away, so kind of need to set your board up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Brawls is very frustrating, but Mortars could be pretty effective later on. Todd just has that Appetite for Brains in his hand, so looks like we're just going to attack here and pass the turn back.
I think Todd was very likely playing around Faith's Shield with his Abrupt Decay last turn while Jeff was tapped out.
Yeah, I guess that is a card we've been seeing running around. So it looks like Appetite for Brains misses, just although Todd does know about the Mizium Mortars now. We're going to see another Scavenge here. Maybe get on another Lingering Souls token perhaps? Or nope, Brawls just gets bigger. And let's see, what could Jeff draw here? I mean, he still has the Appetite for Brains, but Appetite on a 2/2 isn't nearly as impressive. Yeah. Todd just has too many creatures on the board that can basically trade favorably with any Unflinching Courage creature. So
yeah, it's rough too because Todd's it's so ideally Todd would be starting to get in some hits here, but Jeff is on such a high life total from that initial hit with Unflinching Courage.
Yeah, and
the fact that he knows, Jeff has another Unflinching Courage in hand makes damage resisting really challenging. So he sort of needs to just kind of hang back.
And there's a Thundermaw Hellkite. Unfortunately, Jeff is stuck on 3 lands and only an Arbor Elf, so it doesn't have, again, a pretty good draw if he can finally draw his 5th mana. But let's see here. Do we just, now that you drew the Thundermaw, do you just pants up the?
I think this is fine because it basically he's going to just hang back. I think an attack might have been okay there. basically trade your voice for 2 tokens. Is effectively how it plays out in the end.
Yeah, I like it because you still have the Mizium Mortars in your hand.
Right,
you know?
and your voice is a token now. It's not
yeah, and again, Todd will be able to scavenge and make his Varls even bigger. So that was basically the one turn where a 4/4 would have gotten you an effective trade.
Yeah.
Whereas now Varls, he can scavenge the High Priest to make the Varls even bigger. So I think if you're gonna pants up, you might as well just hack. Otherwise, I would just wait to pants up my Hellkite. You know, you're not that far off.
Right.
A pantsed up Thundermail Hellkite can easily.
Then we can actually relive our childhood. Yeah. So there's some value there.
So it looks like Todd's swinging with both Lingering Soul, both Spirit tokens rather, dropping Jeff down to 12, I believe.
Yes.
Not sure what Todd drew for the turn. No Regeneration Shield and a Tragic Slip. So, yep, missed out on some life gain there. It does get a token though with the. And there's the 5th mana, and there's Thundermaw. And I believe he should have a elemental token, correct?
It's possible the trigger was missed.
Okay,
Not sure.
So perhaps it just missed the trigger. I wasn't sure if they were waiting to bring in a token. So Todd is at 8 life now, and there's Gavany Township. So both creatures get a little larger now. And we are going to get a swing from Todd.
And Jeff, Todd knows the last card in hand is Mizium Mortars to send out the flyer, and
so that does it. Timely land for Jeff allows him to cast the Thundermail Hellkite, and Todd Anderson falls now down to 2-1 after his 2 buys. Jeff Rodrigues now moves to 3-0. And again, you know, raw power won out there. Even both players mulligan. Todd put up a pretty good fight early on. We saw some of those synergies, you know, the sacrifice effects, the scavenge, you know, things are kind of working for him. But again, Thundermaw, just too powerful of a card.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet that Thundermaw is one of the better cards just against this deck in general. Not even just for the purpose of Lingering Souls, but because flyers are so powerful against Junk Aristocrats.
Yeah, just having evasion is just is what you need, because Todd's deck is great at gumming up the board, but it can't really deal with flyers.
Yeah.
So
there's basically 4 Tragic Slips. The Lingering Souls, although those match up very poorly with Thundermaw Hellkite at times.
Yep.
And so very susceptible to flyers, and we saw in both the games Jeff was able to win. Thundermaw Hellkite was a big part of that.
Yep. And even the Unflinching Courage was pretty good in that game. I mean, it gained him around 7 life. There was a turn where he probably could have attacked with the Voice of Resurgence too to gain some more life, and the Trample really, you know, kind of pushed through that damage and made